started. Thank you for everyone for joining this morning. I'm really pleased to welcome you all to another ACAP webinar. Today we're going to be talking about prevailing wage and the questions that you have as ACAP delegates and folks who help to administer the program of the Agricultural Conservation Assistance Program. Through implementing these funds, and often you're working with contractors who have prevailing wage requirements from this state funding. So today I'm really pleased to welcome Brian Smolak and Jake Hollabaugh from Labor and Industry, who will be here to give you a brief presentation about the prevailing wage requirements, and then we will be spending some time answering the questions that you submitted when you registered for this webinar. And at the end, we'll have hopefully about 15 minutes of open Q&A to answer any unaddressed questions. And so if you have anything, any questions, you can submit them in the chat. You can also sit tight and listen to see if that question is answered while they're presenting or in the question and answer session. So with that, I will go ahead and kick it to Brian and Jake. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Erin. Nice to see a fine, large audience for today's prevailing wage PowerPoint presentation and questions and answers. My name is Brian Smolak. I'm the director of the Bureau of Labor Law Compliance. We're in Harrisburg. We have 5 district offices statewide, and you are all graced by Jake Hollabaugh, who is our Altoona district office supervisor, who covers a large part of the state. And many of the locations covered by Jake's territory would be counties that you're all from and places where work that will be covered by prevailing wage will be happening. So we are here to present hopefully a really good educational informational PowerPoint to you about prevailing wage. And at that point, we are more than willing to answer any questions. If we don't address certain questions, or if there's certain things that we cannot address because there could be some legal reasons behind it, or perhaps some more in-depth things we need to talk to you about, we would most likely take those types of conversations offline, because today's presentation does not carry the weight of a legal opinion. So let's keep that in mind for today. We're here to present information to you. We would like to educate you to the best of our ability about prevailing wage, but there's just some things that we may have to address with opinion letters, or perhaps with some more in-depth conversation, which is fine. We get inquiries and people calling us all the time with questions that even Jake and I, in all the years of experience we have to go to some other folks in our legal division and say, help us out. Here's a brand new one. So let me just make sure first off that everyone can see my screen. Jake or someone, can you confirm that it is visible for everyone to see?
It is visible.
Cool. Thank you, sir. All right. So today's topics will be discussing public work, agencies, wage rates, classifications of workers, public financing, what projects are. We're going to talk a bit about exclusions to prevailing wage, things that would be considered maintenance work that is not covered by the law itself. We'll talk about workers not covered. We'll discuss how opinions and grievances work, duties of public bodies, duties of contractors doing the work. So the whole gamut. My guess is the audience who is here today will be a little mixture of all of these things. So hopefully this PowerPoint will give you the information necessary. We'll touch on a few other things talking about contractor and subcontractor duties, deductions from wages, overtime, which, believe it or not, we have some other provisions that we enforce here in Pennsylvania too, beyond just prevailing wage. We'll touch on those things, and we'll talk just a tiny bit about enforcement and violations. Today's conversation is not about investigations or violations, but we would like everyone to know that that's also why we're here too, not to just do presentations on information, but also educate contractors or correct violations when they happen so they don't occur again. So what is prevailing wage? So sounds like a tough question, might be a tough answer for some people, but to us, it's really not that difficult, right? Try to make it a little simple. Here's what prevailing wage is. Typically, think of it this way. You're driving down the street and you see a school being built or a government building getting a new roof put on. That's prevailing wage 100%. We know that because it's a public building. It's a government building. It's getting work done. Contractors are performing construction work on this building. But now we enter into the world of grants. So for many, many decades, more and more grants have been let out by different state agencies. There's case law that dates back to the 1990s, the turn of the century at this point, since we're in the 21st. Grants are covered by prevailing wage because we're infusing tax dollars into construction work. It may not be the same of a government building getting a roof put on, but if there's a private building or if there's a farm or any type of property getting a roof put on with all private money, we don't visit to do a prevailing wage enforcement investigation, but we do if there's even $1 of public money being put into that project. So that's why we're here today, because these grants are public dollars that are being funneled into a private construction project for whatever purpose and whatever end result, but there's public money going into it. The work's done under contract. We have a grant agreement. We have a contract in place that needs prevailing wages at this point because now we have work being done, construction under contract. If we have a project that is over $25,000, that is prevailing wage. If there's government money being put into a project, but the project is $20,000 when you combine the labor and materials together, that is not prevailing wage. So we have a level in which we know anything more than 25,000 becomes a public job. And then at that point, when we have these things, when we have all these components met, now we require prevailing wages on that project. Prevailing wages are rates that are assessed by our department, updated on a very regular basis, and put out for everyone to see. We don't hide them, we share them widely. We have a website that allows people to view these rates, to request rates all the time. We get about 11,000 or so of these rate requests per year. There's a lot of construction work happening. When we issue a set of wage rates, it goes onto our publicly available website along with notes as far as what work is on those rates and how the work should be classified, whether it's a laborer or an operator, et cetera. So prevailing wage for a lot of folks sounds difficult, it sounds tough, but I've always said, and I think Jake might agree, the toughest part about prevailing wage is not the paperwork, it's the actual construction work itself. It doesn't change anything. The only difference here is you have a need to pay a certain rate. We might audit that project, we might review that project for compliance. You probably have to get a grant review for compliance. You have to do a certified payroll, but the real work, the real hard work that's being done is stuff you already did anyway. That's the construction work. So public financing, this is sort of, I think, kind of goes without saying. The reason we're here is public financing is the grant we're speaking about today, right? The idea that we're putting, again, even $1 of a grant into a private job, it now creates the need for prevailing wages because it's a part of that money that's funding the project is publicly funded money. It's an interesting world because I think for a long time, the way the law is written, remember this law is from 1960 something, I forget the exact year, I should remember, I think 62 was the last amendment, but we're talking about language that hasn't changed substantially for a long time. Being that as it is, it's addressing public work, and it probably at the time was written didn't take into consideration the amount of grant money that would actually be happening many, many decades later. But here we are. Department of Community Economic Development, Office of Budget, all of the folks in this call today, you all are all aware of a lot of different grant sources out there. But prevailing wage still exists, despite the fact that grants may not have been contemplated in the same way in the 60s as they are now, doesn't change the fact that we have a publicly funded job. We have a caveat to this, which I will probably say is not going to address this at all, but be aware if there's a highway job funded by typically like Marcellus Shale offset money, any local money, there's a higher threshold. It would be $100,000, but I think we're going to wipe away this slide, not care about it because we're not here to talk about that. You guys are getting a whole different type of grant. Enforcement. So here's how this all works, right? We have two sides of the coin of this PowerPoint presentation slide. We have the Department of Labor and Industry, which is Jake and I, and we have public bodies, which I'm not sure how many are on this call today, but there's different responsibilities on each side. L&I, we determine rates, we determine what projects are covered, We give out classifications for building work, highway work, heavy work. We investigate complaints or alleged violations. We do routine inspections. We do presentations like this. On the flip side, public bodies, they actually need to request prevailing wages. They must ensure that contractors and subcontractors are paying rates. They can hold back money. They can say that if there's a contractor not doing something correct, they can report that to us, but hold back actual payment to that contractor. Public bodies also should be requiring the submission of a certified payroll. That certified payroll would actually break down the workers on a job, what they're doing, and how much money they're making for it to make sure that it matches the prevailing wage that we've issued for the project. So we have some examples of public bodies on there. Again, I'm not sure all the people on this call, but if you're a public body, you probably already know you are. Pennsylvania prevailing wages. So one of the misnomers out there, I think, that is widely circulated is that when prevailing wages are issued, our department issues Philadelphia rates for the whole state or Pittsburgh rates for the whole state. No, it doesn't work like that. So our calculations and classifications for prevailing wage are based off of what the local work would be. It's based off of the actual work being performed in that locality, that county, that jurisdiction. The law itself doesn't mention county. It doesn't break rates down by town. It breaks it down by locality. It says the word locality. So there's some fluidity there. But typically we're going to give a rate out by a county because we're going to get information from different sources in certain counties as to what the most commonly paid prevailing wage rate would be. It's not the highest rate. It's not the lowest rate. It's not an average. It's the most commonly paid rate in a locality. So if 20 people get paid $50 an hour and 5 people get paid $80 an hour, prevailing wage is not 80, it would be 50 because more people are getting that commonly paid rate for whatever that construction work would be. A lot of rates are based off of collective bargaining agreements or other data that we get for craft classification where the work is being performed. Prevailing wage rates also could include fringe benefits or cash paid to the worker. So we're going to get into sort of that detail about the rate themselves because we kind of break it down into 2 categories. Fringe benefits get a little confusing, but we will certainly today try to simplify it for everyone. Okay. And by the way, Jake, if you ever want to add something in, just please interrupt me. All right.
I will do that.
Thank you. I know you will. And I'll interrupt you if I want to add something into what you say. All right. Prevailing wage rate types. So when you get a rate determination from us, I don't have one in front of me, and I wish I put an example in the spreadsheet in the PowerPoint, but I didn't. But a rate determination will have a heading on the very top. You're going to see the name of the project, the serial number, because every rate determination we give out gets a serial number. It would be for this year 25 dash whatever number we're at. It's all sequential order. We also give a designation for that work. So let's eliminate what we probably will not give on this one. We're not going to give you a residential designation because a residential project is something that benefits a single family occupant of a home or a duplex, something where maybe a roof is being done in a single family house. It's being covered by a grant. That would be most likely a residential project. As you can see from this, most likely the building and the highway rates, I think, will be covered, and that's what we're going to give determinations out. You might see heavy showing up on your project as well. That could include things for sewage or pipeline installation, bridges or dams. So it's a very good possibility that some heavy delineations will be given out for work that you're requesting. But I'm thinking building and highway work is going to be the big ones. Building work, essentially sort of common sense. An enclosed structure, right? An actual building, something with a roof on top of it, something which is able to be lived in, you can store things in. A highway would be work that's on highways or work that's on roadways, taxiways, alleyways, paths, parking areas, other projects that are not incidental to a building or highway construction. And finally, the heavy, as mentioned before, dams are included, bridges are included, pipelines, subways. Well, I'm not sure if we're going to do any work in subways, but if you build a subway out there and somewhere in rural Pennsylvania, that'd be cool. And then finally, sewage installation too. So there might be the chance that you're going to get a project that might come to you with a building, highway, and heavy classification. And you'll be really confused, but don't worry. We break our rates down by building, highway, and heavy. So when you get all the rates back, it's like 15 or 20 pages. It's everything that you would need for that project. So you just have to find the right section for the right rates.
And real quick, like Brian said, there is a breakdown on the rates. Generally, there's a page that encompasses all the building rates, and there's a page that you'll see H heavy highway. So it's the heavy highway rates for carpenter. There's not a different rate for heavy highway carpenter or heavy carpenter or highway carpenter. They come under the same line item where on building, so there's a building rate and then there's a heavy highway rate together, but they come in two separate sections.
That is exactly right. The issuance of prevailing wage rates. All right, so actually what we kind of just discussed there. So you'll see on that, maybe it's a little bit small for everybody, but that's kind of an example of what you're going to get back. It's going to talk about the name of the project. It will discuss who the awarding agency would be, the serial number, the date of the contract award, the county, the office. It's going to give out, that's just a little snippet, a little screenshot of the rates we give out. But that's an example of the rates and how we have a different section. You'll see on that one, for example, we say building on that project. That's the rates for the building section. So what you do to request wage rates. Now here's where we get into actually what you got to do, right? How do you get this rate that we're talking about? It's easy. Go to pa.gov. It's as simple as that. When you go to pa.gov, you search for prevailing wage. Also easy. The state website has changed. Some people don't like it. Some people have gotten used to it. But the search function is great. You go to pa.gov and just search for whatever you want to, for anything in the state, by the way. If you want your driver's license, if you want something about the Department of Education, just search it on pa.gov and you're going to find the right office. Anyway, you go to pa.gov, search for prevailing wage. You'll find the link to the request or search prevailing wage rates page. You're actually going to go to that page and fill out a 5-question form, put your name and email, hit submit. You'll get an email back immediately that we have it. If you don't get that email back immediately, you either have it in your spam folder or we didn't get it. So try it again. Within about a day or two after we review it, normally less than a day or two, but we say a day or two just in case it's a Friday, you got to wait till a Monday. We're going to get rates back to you really quickly. We're going to review that project. We're going to find the right rates for the location, issue that rate to you or to whoever's requesting. Those rates now become the holy Bible of the project. They are the rates for the duration of the job, right? What you get in your inbox becomes the rates for the work that takes place for all contractors and all subcontractors and all workers that work on that project. So those rates should be posted. Those rates should be given out to anyone who's on the job site so there's no ambiguity. They all know what the rules of the game are. And at that point, once everything's said and done, in the happiest of all worlds, you'll get your certified payrolls from a contractor. You'll submit them to whoever the grant agency is, and you'll get your grant, and everybody will be happy, and you'll have work done on your project.
Brian, Aaron has a question.
Yeah, I think this would be a good time to bring up one of the questions that was submitted, because I think that there's a 3-month rule about things lasting for 3 months. So you said it's for the term of the project.
Right.
This is the prevailing wage, but oftentimes ACAP projects might be, completed over a longer period of time. So what is the case where you do an initial prevailing wage assessment even before you have started construction, and then when do you redo it? Can you touch on
Yep.
that?
Thank you, Aaron, for bringing it up. Great question. So let's give it a very practical example. Let's say it's January 1st, and let's say you request rates today for work that you think will happen on January 30th. But there's massive snowstorms, everything happens, disaster, you can't do it. You don't award your contract until May of that year. All of your plans have gone south. So you thought you're going to award a construction contract in January, but you didn't. Now it's May. Well, those rates expired because the rates that we give out are good for 120 days, right? If the contract award does not take place within 120 days, a new set of wage rates must be requested. So in that circumstance, on the flip side, January 1st, by January 30th, you award the contract, but the work itself doesn't start until May. In that case, the rates we give out on January 1st are good because the contract award date happened within 120 days. I don't want to ask the room if that makes sense, but Aaron, I hope that answered the question. And if anybody does have some more questions about that, let us know. But that's a great point that you brought that up.
Okay, so I just want to, reiterate that to clarify, because thank you, Brian, for giving that example. When folks are submitting prevailing wage requests before a bid goes out, for example, to help contractors understand how much they might be bidding on for a project that is relevant for prevailing wage, they might do a prevailing wage determination before that, so we can make an estimate, and that won't necessarily be valid, but it will be helpful for the bid process. And then a new prevailing wage determination should be completed if it's more than 120 days out from when the contract is signed. And then for the duration of the project, when that prevailing wage that was done approximately within that window of the contract being signed will be the valid for the length of the project. Would that be accurate?
That would be. And to make it easier too, so if you, let's say, get into a circumstance where you applied for rates, but the contract wasn't awarded until next year. That's an extreme example. Obviously, the rates that we give out in 2025 expired because you never awarded the contract. You can call us in 2026, and we have two options. Option number one would be we can just modify the rate we give out and change it, right? Which would then give it a brand new serial number. Or option number two, like you had mentioned, you can go back to pa.gov and request another set of wage rates. That's fine too. Whatever way works, we can make it work. But essentially, it must be that the rates that we issue, the contract must be awarded within that 120 days. Otherwise, those rates expired. When we say expired, by the way, the real problem that occurs there on the screen you have in front of you. I know these are older years, but let's look at asbestos workers. We would say a total rate of $64 an hour would be paid on June 28th, right? That goes up to 65 on July 27th of the next year. We also have rates that go to 2024. I'm not sure if this is the best example because sometimes we include escalators, but an example where we don't include escalators could be the boiler makers. Let's go to that one. We would say $84 an hour on January 1st, 2021 or 2022, $85 an hour. And let's say now that the actual contract award happened in 2023 and the rates increased, right? You're not going to see that. That's why you have to ask for a new set of wage rates. So yeah, I don't know if I made the situation worse by answering it that way, but Aaron, you were right in how you described it. So, all right. And I know there'll probably be some questions we can get to at the end about that. Okay, so prevailing wage challenges. If anyone thinks that the rates that we give out are wrong, or if anyone feels that the rates are incorrect in some form, you can challenge that. All of this has a very legal process. So we have Section 8 appeals, which is basically a hearing petition is challenging the rates within 10 days of the publication of the issuance of a wage rate. Here's a good example. We give out rates for, a project of some sort of a dam restoration. We included the wrong set of wage rates for a laborer. It was our mistake. Someone calls us, someone challenges it. We can correct that. If we say, however, nope, we're right. We give out the wrong rate, but you got to pay it anyway. You can actually challenge us and take that to the Prevailing Wage Appeals Board. All right. There's other types of grievances out there in which people are saying that there should be a classification that perhaps is not in there that should be in there. That's an entirely different type of challenge. But the most common challenge that we might see is someone challenging a wage rate if we feel that the rate that we give out is incorrect in some way. So just let it be known, if you ever needed to call us about that, we could, of course, guide you. But if you challenge something, we're not going to talk you out of it. We're going to give you the instructions on how you do it the right way. And then we can respond to the actual litigation process if it's something that needs to be litigated. If it's a mess up and we goof something up, we will change it. We'll correct it. So communication would be best there. Okay, who's entitled to prevailing wage? Well, the law itself would give us guidance on that. Anyone who does construction work on the project, owner-operators included. So someone who does construction work would be the actual person who picks up the tools and does the tool of a trade of some form. There could be some folks who are not included, right? people, let's say, who are driving materials to the job site and leaving. Hey, here's your wood for the bridge you're building. I'm going to drop it right there and I'm going. That person doesn't get paid prevailing wage. They're not doing any installation. A foreman, someone who's a supervisor on the job site, not actually doing anything, no hands-on work, not covered by prevailing wage. People not covered by prevailing wage could also be folks who are doing the architectural design, office workers, people not performing the work itself. Anyone else who's doing the actual labor, the mechanic work, skilled, semi-skilled, any apprentices, any contractors, subcontractors doing actual work, they're covered. I said before, owner-operators. Jake, you want to talk a bit about owner-operators? They're covered by prevailing wage as well, right?
Correct. Yeah, most this is a big one we get in all the district offices for a lot of the projects. Owner operators that not filling out certified payrolls or feeling that they don't have to meet the definition of a worker on site. So the easiest way to remember this is if they pick up a shovel, a hammer, they jump into a bobcat or skid steer, they're a worker. We take the distinction of them being an owner off the table at that point. They're still an owner. They still own the company, but once they start to work, they're a worker on site. So you can be an owner if you're just observing, sitting in the job trailer, directing traffic as far as material deliveries, etc. But once you start doing the work itself, you have to be paid no less than what the prevailing wage is. And we see general problem is a lot of owners get draws or they'll be on salary. So that salary has to at least equate to the carpenter's rate or the electrician's rate or whatever it may be. So it might be a challenge sometimes to try to break that down and figure out what it is, but owners are still subject to prevailing wage.
That's right. And also some surveyors could be subject to prevailing wage if they're doing any hands-on work on the job site itself. Individuals involved with on-site engineer or truck driving could also be prevailing wage. Now, truck driving gets a little bit tricky. The best thing about truck driving is that you have to think of it this way. A truck driver who's hauling materials around a job site or to an adjacent pit for the job site, something dedicated to the job site, all of that's covered by prevailing wage. Someone who's delivering materials in a truck may not be. Although if we get into the world of maybe a concrete truck driver, that could be now rated because you're performing work on that actual job site by not only unloading what you're doing, but also raking it out, leveling it out. So you got some work on that job site that you're probably on it for more of a substantial period of time. So these get a little bit technical with truck drivers. If there's ever questions people have about truck drivers, give us a call. We might have to issue a legal opinion or talk it through.
And there is real quick, Brian, one of the other truck drivers we see a lot on is the truck driver that is hauling asphalt. They'll hook into a hopper and they'll do a section of roadway or a driveway or pathway. They're hooking into another apparatus to disperse the asphalt. They're definitely covered under the act. They're not just delivering a load of 2B and going. They're actually on the site then at that point. So we do see that one a lot, that they're a truck driver and they feel that they're not subject to prevailing wage, but they are, like Brian said, they're doing actual work on site at that point.
Exactly. All right. Projects themselves. Now, what's a project? We mentioned before what a project is, right? More than $25,000 in estimated costs. We're talking about actual work that takes place, construction work that takes place, and government money in there. A project may not be divided into multiple projects just to avoid prevailing wage, first of all, right? That's a no. We can't allow that, and we would issue rates in a situation like that and enforce prevailing wage. There are times in which there might be what's called a demarcation between different work. Maybe. Here's how we handle that. If there's ever a request from someone out there saying, hey, I think this project is actually 2 jobs, what we would say to you is we're not going to answer that verbally. We're going to ask you to send us a copy of your grant application, the contract itself that you have with the construction contractor, details about why you feel these projects are separate, and then we're going to give a legal opinion, which if you'd like or don't like, or whomever doesn't like it, could also be challenged with an actual appeal process. So we do ask this to be in writing to us. We can discuss these projects, but typically when we're asked for a demarcation allowance, we're going to ask you to send us something in writing. That goes back to the grievances. Not going to get too on the litigation side here, but grievances are simply, think of it this way: Bureau gets a request, we issue an opinion. If someone doesn't like it, they could appeal it to the appeals board. The appeals board issues some sort of a decision. The Secretary of Labor adopts it or does not adopt it. If someone doesn't like that, it can go to Commonwealth Court. If someone doesn't like that and the Supreme Court wants to hear your case, it goes there too. Okay, exclusions. When work is not covered. Federal projects are typically not covered by state rates. There's a caveat to that. If there's federal money that does not require Davis-Bacon, it could still be covered by state rates because we're infusing state dollars into something. So that gets a little bit technical. If you ever have any questions about coverage, let us know. But my assessment of the grant we're talking about today is that it's state, and we're talking about prevailing wage for Pennsylvania only. Maintenance work, we say to be discussed. We're going to discuss maintenance work in a minute, but it may not be covered work. Also, any work with let's see here, grants pertaining to the use of acquisition, equipment, job training, etc. Yes, if the grant itself is being given to someone just for purchasing things and it does not include construction, that would probably also not be covered work. More exclusions. Off-site work. So I don't know how much off-site work will be happening with the grant we're discussing here, but an example of off-site work is that picture right there. The furniture gets assembled at a plant somewhere in Illinois or California. It's trucked here. It's put into an office. It's bolted to the ground. The only thing that would be covered by prevailing wage there is bolting that to the ground. The actual production of that in California would not be covered by prevailing wage because it would be off-site. Again, not knowing what all of the work would be here, there might be some off-site components, but if you ever have questions about it, just let us know. Material suppliers who don't perform services on the job site, I think we mentioned that. Public body employees. A public body employee could be, go back to the example of a school district. The school puts something out for bid. Let's say you want to install cameras in a school, but the actual school workers themselves are removing ceiling tiles. Public body employees are not covered by prevailing wage. So keep that in mind. Private employees are anyone doing work under contract, they're covered by prevailing wage. Any owner operators are covered, but public body employees have a carve out. Furniture assembly, right? We talked that. Supervisor work if the supervisor does not use any tools or equipment. Jake, anything we missed there?
Nah, I think that covers everything. And just to reiterate the furniture thing again, because we see that a lot, as long as it's bolted, if they're just bringing in desks and chairs and setting them in there, that's not covered. They have to fasten them to the floor or ceiling or the wall. It has to be a permanent structure or a quote unquote attached structure.
That's right. Okay, maintenance work. Now we have maintenance work as its own separate thing because maintenance work sometimes we get a lot of calls from people saying, I have a hole in my roof and I think it will be maintenance if I replace it because I'm maintaining my roof. And we will say to that person, it's not. It's repair, it's new construction, it's reconstruction. Maintenance is very limited. Maintenance would be when the actual extent of the facilities is not changed, right? So I don't know what the best example in the grant we're talking about today could be, but I'll give an example that I think is practical. If you look at the floor in front of you that you're standing on right now, and you see a little tear in the carpet, and I do, by the way, for me, and I want that little tear fixed. Someone comes in and replaces that little section. That's maintenance work. We're not changing the entire carpet. But now I say, I don't like that tear, and I don't like blue carpet. I want red. They come in and do an entire new carpet job as reconstruction, right? So maintenance is extremely limited. It's a lot of times maintenance you'll see on some highway work where that person tamping down that little pothole, that could be maintenance work because we're not repaving an entire roadway. Again, not knowing the extent of some of the grants we're talking about here today, if you have any questions about maintenance, let us know, but it's extremely limited in its nature. So yeah, let us know if there's any detailed questions you have about that. Because what is not maintenance would be any in-kind replacement. telecommunications wiring, roof replacement, road milling and replacement, repair and rehabilitation of manholes, painting other than covering up minor imperfections. That's all covered by prevailing wage, right? A lot of times people say to us, what about if you cut down all of the trees that we don't like on this property and we replant all new trees? That's not maintenance, that's reconstruction. Because yes, we're talking about trees, not a building, but in the spirit of the maintenance exemption being limited, you're going to change the size and extent of the property that you're looking at by planting new trees and removing what was there. Now, if you just mow the lawn, you're maintaining the grass. If you rip everything up and we're going to concrete this part, plant new grass here, that's reconstruction. Jake, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's covered as well. Same thing. It's the, like Brian said, maintenance. There's a small window that constitutes maintenance. So if you're kind of on the fence and not sure, give us a call. There's 5 district offices around. Like I said, I cover 26 counties, I think, at this point. So I'll cover, I think, a majority of what who's in the room. So use me as a resource. If I don't know the answer, I'll go to Brian. He's my next resource. But yeah, never be afraid to reach out to us for that answer.
Public body duties. Public bodies should be requesting wage rates, and they also should be. So the public body duty here is an interesting thing, right? Because public bodies are going to be a lot of different local areas throughout the entire Commonwealth. But typically, the public body should be requesting wage rates, ensuring that rates are being paid, and collecting certified payrolls. More public body duties could be actually holding back money, right? If you feel someone is not paid correctly, maybe they're not submitting certified payrolls, you can actually hold back a grant allowance to them. Happens all the time. We'll get an email from DCD and they'll say, hey, there's a project that we've awarded a grant to, but no one requested wage rates and no one actually submitted certified payrolls. Can you look into it? We do, and we find out no one got paid the right rate. They hold back that grant payment until everything gets rectified and corrected. So there's some duties and some powers that a public body actually has. One thing that we talked a lot about is a certified payroll. So this form looks like it's challenging, it looks frightening, but it's not. It's actually pretty simple. The entire top part of the certified payroll form, by the way, this certified payroll form should typically be filled out weekly by a contractor and all subcontractors on work. And this is something that must be put into the hands of the public body to ensure that the rates that were paid on the job site match up to the rates that we issued for that project. So essentially, you're going to put the information about who you are filling it out first. Then you're going to put the project location, the serial number. Serial number could be ascertained from the rate determination we give out. You're going to put the employee name, what the work classification is that they did, what day and date were they there, how many hours that day, and what rate they got. That's kind of it. Now you're going to detail out some cash contributions, some fringe benefit contributions, if there are any. You're going to tell us what the deductions are, but you're essentially documenting what that worker received, in essence, where tax dollars went to for that prevailing wage project. Not sure if you want to add anything else, Jake.
Yeah, and I jump in on that. It's for the project, specific project that it's worked on. We get a lot of questions on, say the individual worked 1 hour and you fill it out and you have 1 hour of carpentry work, et cetera, and it's $50 or whatever the case may be. The total deductions, obviously, you're not sure of. That's going to come off of the paycheck at the end of the week for the other work that was done. So the total deductions might be $600, and the gross pay for this project alone might be $50. So there could be, we get that question a ton because people aren't sure on if they're not working a 40-hour work week on a project and they're jumping around to different ones, how to fill these out. Same thing on check number. A lot of companies don't do checks anymore. They do direct deposit. The company can just put DD for direct deposit or something. It's basically a roadmap for us if we do an investigation or we're doing some type of compliance check. That way, when we're going to go pull data, we kind of know what questions to ask on top of just the basic questions that we have in front of us.
That's right. Yep. It's a check and balance. It's ensuring that rates are paid properly. And actually, too, the certified payroll should match up what you actually pay workers, right? Because you're certifying on the second page under penalty of law that everything on that document is accurate. Okay, contractor and subcontractor duties.
Brian, could you go back, please, actually? So and then maybe to the previous slide as well, just to circle back to that. Thank you. So for the public body's duties, the public body, which is the conservation district staff and other, ACAP delegated entities, they will be required to submit the prevailing wage determination. Is that basically what this is requiring?
The public body is the one who would submit for a request for the wage rates. Then the wage rates will be given out to the different contractors and subcontractors in the project. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, just wanted to clarify that because somebody had a question.
Okay.
And then on the next slide, the folks who are mostly on the call right now are the folks who will be certifying this. So they will receive these forms from their contractors and they will be reviewing this to make sure that it's correct. So the cells on the chart, the cells on the, Excel sheet here that they're most likely to want to look at. Could you kind of go over that a little bit of like what's the places that they need to look at on this form to make sure that it looks correct?
So first things first, APPR rate percentage. That's if the contractor has an approved apprenticeship program. If they don't have an approved program, nothing should be in there because you have to pay the worker the full rate unless there's an actual approved program through a state apprenticeship and training council. Work classification is very important for us because if you're just paying someone $50 an hour but don't put the classification of work that worker did, it raises questions for us because if they're, let's say, doing electrical installation, but you're paying them $50 an hour, you're probably not paying them enough money. So the work classification should be there. Obviously, the dates and times of when the work happened is very important for record keeping. You should be keeping records on that payroll anyway. The base hourly rate and total fringe benefits gets a lot of folks confused. Let's try to make that simple. So when we give out rates, we're going to give out two different lines. Line number one will be the rate itself. Line number two will be the fringe benefit allowance. Line number three, in this case, will be the total of all those two rates put together, right? So to make it simple, let's say that the rate of pay we give out is $30 an hour, and we say the fringe benefit allowance is $20 an hour. That means on that project for each worker, somehow, some way, they must account for $50 per hour for all of the workers, right? But they can reduce the money in the pocket that they give. They can reduce the actual wages by claiming fringe benefits by saying, well, we pay for this worker's health care. We give him vacation days. We have a 401k, right? You have to annualize that money. So if you pay in someone's healthcare, for example, and let's say you pay $10,000 a year for that person's healthcare, divide $10,000 by 1,920 hours to come up with an hourly rate. You do the same calculation for every fringe benefit that you as a company pay for somebody. The money that a worker pays out of his or her pocket does not count. It's not a benefit to pay your own money. It's only the benefit that you can take credit for what you pay in for that plan. That reduces your actual rate of pay you have to give a worker. Now, on the flip side, Jake, let me ask you a question. If there's a contractor and nobody there has any health care, 401k, or vacation days, what do we do?
Pay the complete package in the base rate.
That's right. So that $50 an hour that we would add up to, it's the 30 and the 20, but there's no fringe benefits. All $50 an hour must now be paid to that worker, right? And then finally, the deductions and the gross pay for prevailing wage and check number, they're important too, but we're really looking at the work classification, the hourly rate, and what the fringe benefits are that was taken. And every contractor should be doing this. Every subcontractor should be doing this as well. So if Jake Hollabaugh Construction subs out a part of work to Brian's Construction, I'm doing my own certified payroll. Jake's doing his certified payroll. All of our payrolls go to the awarding agency after we do them. That's kind of how that would go.
And a couple things to add into there. The week ending date, even if there's no work, so they get on and do a week's worth of work, and then something happens with materials and there's no work the second week, a payroll should still be submitted with it's a no work week payroll. That way there's an ongoing. So there's week one, they worked, week 2, 3, no work, but a payroll is still submitted. That way, again, if there's a compliance check or just in general, you can see that Brian Smolak Construction was on the project for 5 weeks, but they only might have worked 1 full week or 2 weeks or whatever the case may be. So make sure that the week ending, even if they're not working, there's still a payroll in succession.
Yeah, and also too, as an awarding agency out there, keep in mind it's the contractor certifying under penalty of law that they've done this. If they didn't pay workers correctly and you collected the payroll, it's on the contractor for violating the act, not on an awarding agency for not noticing something. Now, if you see like, oh my God, workers are only being paid $20 an hour, but this is an electrical installation job, then we have a little bit of a problem there, right? But you let us know about that problem and we could assist by ensuring that rates are paid properly or that we get something corrected. Okay, in interest of time, I know we have a few more slides. I'm going to skip a lot because it involves our enforcement. I just want to get to some questions, but we talked about contractor and subcontractor duties. And my assumption, Aaron, everyone's going to get this PowerPoint anyway. So if there's anything people need to read through and ask us about, you can do so. The certified payrolls that you collect should be kept for 2 years. You want to keep them electronically? That's cool. Scan them in, we're good with that. But they should be kept for 2 years. We talked about fringe benefits and what we would say fringe benefits are. Healthcare, vacation, retirement funds, things like that are the most common fringe benefits we see. If you have any questions about the calculation, I know we did that 30 and $20 an hour thing. Just let us know if you have some more questions. Deductions. This touches on the wage payment collection law. If anyone takes money out of someone's paycheck, it must benefit the worker for that money to come out, and it must be signed off on in writing for that money to come out. There's a difference between authorized deductions and unauthorized deductions. Unauthorized means, which means unless it's a court order, right? Unless it's something where there's a court involved, taking money out of someone's paycheck without an actual signed authorization and without it benefiting the worker could be a violation of the act. Overtime requirements still exist. So, as you know, overtime is anything after 40 hours a week for an hourly worker that must be paid time and a half. No difference here. If someone's working 50 hours in a prevailing wage job, they have a higher rate of pay than normal. Their higher rate of pay becomes the new rate of pay, so it would be time and a half on that prevailing wage. We have different types of violations that occur. Contractors can maybe do something by mistake. We correct that. We ensure they try not to do it again. Intentional violations could be a contractor purposely did it, didn't care, and we would seek a debarment against them so they can't get jobs for 3 years. And then we would publish their names as an actual debarment that no one should be giving them a state contract to. Going to some mighty details about intentional violations. All these are based off of court proceedings and actual violations that occurred in history. We have the ways referrals come into us and how they can become an actual, maybe even a criminal referral at times. We're not going to get too much into that, but just keep in mind, don't violate the law. Don't take money without ensuring you're documenting where it goes to. Stay above the fray, be good, get your grant money, be happy. Don't violate the act. That's the best message. Intentional violations, worker protests. So when we issue an order for someone to pay wages back, workers can actually protest us and say, no, Department of Labor, you got it wrong. I'm owed more money. And they're entitled to a hearing. So all of these different proceedings could actually have a very, a legal process that would occur based off of what different paths the case might take. We have a lot of information at pa.gov. So we have a frequently asked question page. We have all of our labor law laws and regulations. We have the certified payroll form that you can download. We have the online prevailing wage rate application. We have the mandatory poster that should be posted on job sites. We have a worker classification notes, which would be any notes that you're going to see on the rates we give out: labor 1, labor 2, labor 3, labor 4. And you're going to say, what does that mean? Well, you're going to go to pa.gov and look for your county, and then you're going to see definitions of what labor 1, 2, 3, and 4 actually do. Oh, well, labor 1 is a flagger. Oh, labor 2 is hand shoveling. Then you'll know how to classify your workers on a job site. Our rates and the notes complement the rates. Then you're going to find also on our website other information about different laws. hey, child labor laws still apply, overtime laws still apply, wage laws still apply in general. So yes, it's prevailing wage, but these other laws that we enforce still apply as well. District office contacts, our email is laborlaw@pa.gov. You can't get easier than that. pa.gov, laborlaw@pa.gov. We're trying to keep it simple. Jake's office is first, the Altoona Regional Office, so you can see his number there. All of our district offices are listed out. That concludes our slideshow. We have a few minutes. I tried to skim through that last couple questions and answers or what we didn't address. We're open for a couple more minutes, it looks like.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I think, yeah, we'll spend about 5 minutes going through some of the questions that folks had submitted and questions that hadn't been addressed. Hopefully we can follow up with a more, another resource that will be developed, because I know a lot of these questions do come up as they relate to how to implement ACAP appropriately. So a pretty common question that was submitted, I'm going to paraphrase it. So Brian and Jake, you summarized that ACAP, or excuse me, prevailing wage is relevant, or it applies when they're a project over $25,000. Are there any exceptions or exemptions for that limit of $25,000 besides highway costs? And how would you apply for it if there are exemptions or exceptions?
Yeah, the only exception that might be is if it's a maintenance project, like something true maintenance, something that we described in that limited sense of maintenance. But other than that, I guess the only other potential would be if you feel that there's multiple projects and you think there's something that demarcates them from each other, you would send us a letter asking us to do a legal opinion back to you on that. Beyond that, however, there's no exemptions or exceptions to the act itself. The act is written in a sense where it covers all these types of projects, unless it's maintenance or demarcation. There really wouldn't be anything else. Again, unless it's federal dollars, right? But if it's federal dollars, you're still probably covered by Davis-Bacon anyway.
And I'll give a quick example of like the demarcation. One that we get questions on is if it's a building and you're getting grant money to kind of clean up the facade, to clean up the exterior, do some brickwork or do whatever, but the individual that owns the building is going to kind of spend their own money, or they're gonna build the suit, as far as they're gonna have tenants that are gonna come in and they're the ones that are going to put the money into the interior to do the flooring or whatever. Generally, the grant money could be just for the exterior remodeling or reconstruction exterior. So, but again, that would have to come to our office, and our legal department would decide if there's enough of a line of demarcation between the two projects, whatever the grant language would be, et cetera. So that's something that we have to make the call, not anybody else would make the call on that.
Yeah.
And there are some questions when it applies to ACAP, especially when the farmer that we are working with is doing some of that labor. So I think that might be where some of those circumstances come up with this program in particular, where the farmer might be implementing some of the labor on their own operation, besides from what a contractor might be doing for different components of the project. So perhaps that's something we can address more separately, because I think that we would get into some of those details on how that pertains specifically
I'll say
to
this,
ACAP. Go ahead.
if there's anyone out there who is going to perform work simultaneous to a construction contractor performing work, we'd have to look at that. I think each project like that should be brought to our attention so we can give an opinion out on something of that nature. Remember, one of the key factors and one of the challenges is that every workman on the job site should be paid prevailing wages, right? And if work is done under contract, it should be paid prevailing wage. So it may be the overall contract we have to look at. My best advice would be, in those circumstances, for whoever's in this room, bring that to our attention so our bureau can give a legal opinion to you about it.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can follow up to make sure that that's being done consistently for ACAP, because this is a very common circumstance.
Okay.
Great. I think there are a lot more questions that we weren't able to get to today, but I think we can circle back and make sure that these get answered and addressed. So I think, Brian, maybe I'm going to have a couple of slides up here for a second. I'm going to share my screen, but then maybe putting everybody's regional contacts in the chat would be great, because if anybody has questions that they want to reach out to their regional person, please do so. So let me share my screen here. Okay, so we are recording this session today, so this will be made available for everybody afterwards. This is all in accordance with ACAP, so thank you for the funding that is supporting these programs. Thank you everybody for coming today. If you have any more questions, please submit them in the form that I will give everybody access to in a second. I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of the upcoming Keystone training. If you have not attended and you need to attend, there is one upcoming in September. Additionally, a reminder of the upcoming ACAP conference, which is next September, so not this year, next year. And here is the evaluation form for the webinar today. I will put the link in the chat so that you can access that a little bit more easily. And we'll stick around for 1 or 2 more minutes if we want to put any more questions in the chat, or if anybody can access the evaluation form, because that will be very helpful for us to gather this information. If there are questions that are specific to your job and how you are implementing prevailing wage as the public entity, we want those questions addressed. And then also the contractors that you work with, they're going to have questions specifically that we can address as pertinent to their job descriptions, because I know that there's different requirements for different types of folks who are making sure we're all following these rules. So please let us know if you already submitted questions when you registered for this session. We have accounted for them, so you don't have to resubmit them. But if anything came up while Brian and Jake were presenting, then please submit them as part of the evaluation form. And then we can end the recording now, Jenny.